Yeah, sure. So the impact of big data is pretty big in the economy. So we see a lot of customers of MapR have saved millions by using the solution. Cisco, for example, saved 40 million in bringing in the solution to revamp essentially how they calculate data around some of their hardware offerings. And you see this in general. If I look at things like Solutionary and the amount of log file data that they're crunching, if I look at waste management, which we talked about before, and what they're saving in terms of logistics, there's a huge amount of money being saved in terms of the economics of Hadoop versus traditional data warehouse and database solutions, but it's also enabling things that weren't possible before. Now, on a grander scale, if you look at what Hadoop can do for the public, you see things like transformations in healthcare. So you see cases where Hadoop is enabling dramatic cost reductions and also optimization of healthcare, providing better outcomes for people. And this obviously allows for better care by providing more money in a more targeted way to different people. If you look at the Aadhaar project in India, which I talked about before, things like financial services for people, bank accounts, basic things like that, being able to pay a utility bill or being able to get healthcare, these things are not possible without an identity. And so Hadoop, again, is an example of a technology that allows for the aggregation of biometric data and the analysis of that data. So there is a huge impact that Hadoop is really having both for everyday people and also for corporations that are using the technology to build loyalty and intimacy with their customers in ways that were not possible before. Sure, so we do see Hadoop being adopted at all scales, both obviously it started with the large users, right? The early adopters are people who need a tremendous scale, but Hadoop solves not just the scaling problem, but also this ability to aggregate different sources of data and allow things that weren't possible on traditional infrastructures. So even a small to medium-sized business would want to look at things like, how can I use Hadoop to mine, for example, the data coming from the website? Almost every company in Spain has got some sort of presence on the web. Well, how can I mine that data to build some sort of better awareness of my customers, and what sort of things are they interested in my company? What sort of products that I'm selling are they interested in? So that's an example. Log file analysis is becoming very, very common use case of Hadoop in enterprises of all different scales. Replacement of data warehouse, or even just augmentation of data warehouse, doing things like the extract and transform logic on Hadoop, but then moving some of that data over to the data warehouse and using it in a more limited, more precise way, but using Hadoop to store the bulk of the data. Again, data warehouse is very pervasive. There's a lot of companies at different size that make use of either that or operational databases to keep track of historical corporate information. Again, that's a place where really Hadoop has some tremendous economics behind it. It's much, much cheaper than those technologies. If I were a small to medium-sized business, I'd be seriously considering the use of Hadoop for storing that sort of unstructured data and analyzing it. Big Data Spain was tremendously well organized. I was just talking to one of my colleagues who roves all over Southern Europe and attends these shows, and he did say, and I've got to agree based on my attendance at some of these shows, I rarely see a show this polished, this well organized, this well structured with a really good agenda, and you brought speakers from some of the most important companies in Hadoop. So certainly my hat's off to the organizers, and I think it was just very, very well structured, well organized. Very good conference.